I think you know what I mean.
Now, like Sherry said, a lot of Tom's inspiration, it looks like, came from you kids. Was there anything that you specifically came up with that made it into the show, even though you were just like a little child at the time?
None of my ideas or episodic storylines or characters or anything like that from me got into the story, got into the show Animaniacs, except for this one line. My dad was working on the main theme for Animaniacs, coming up with the lyrics, and he had run out of words that rhymed with Animaniacs.
I know that I spent like a week writing the Animaniacs theme song lyrics, and I probably had like 7 different versions, all with different words.
He had Dot is cute and Yakko yaks, Wacko packs away the snacks, and didn't have the rest of it. It just so happened that I saw on TV that day that our current president enjoyed playing the saxophone in his spare time. So I chimed in with Bill Clinton plays the sax. And that got into the final cut of the song.
Wacko packs away the snacks while Bill Clinton plays the sax. We're Animaniacs.
It rhymes. It's amazing.
Now, for all of you, when I think of writers on a show, especially a comedy show, I think of Dick Van Dyke. I think of everybody packed in a room and they're all shouting ideas and they're saying, oh, that's great, what's the next line, what's the next line? And did the process work that way, or was it very much an individual process?
There wasn't like, sort of like the Dick Van Dyke thing where we're all sitting in a room together going, okay, what's the next line? We would all go away and, sort of struggle over the scripts.
It wasn't like, the sitcom method where you sit in a room and you break a story and, everybody kind of throws out their 2 cents.
You would come up with ideas for characters, for different stories for different characters, and you'd pitch the idea to Tom, and he'd say, yeah, that sounds good, go write it, that kind of thing. I do remember that Paul Rugg wrote a lot of the Warner Brothers cartoons because he was especially good at that.
Paul, God bless him, he's one of the funniest people on earth and one of the most talented writers on earth. But boy, when he's into a script and he's struggling with it, when it's not going perfectly, it's like you can just see the pain.
I remember I was having problems with an episode called Hearts of Twilight. It was a parody of Hearts of Darkness. And sometimes you get yourself into a big problem because you're like, boy, wouldn't it be funny if the Warners had to go up studio in a golf cart and sort of stop a director who was spending millions of dollars, and that director would be, Mr. Director, sort of Jerry Lewis and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's. And I think I wrote the first 2 pages of that for like a week and a half. And finally I was like, I didn't know what to do. So I went into Tom's office and I said, Tom, I just don't get it. I think I should work on something else. And I remember the only time Tom ever got mad at me, he said, no, this is too expensive. You need to finish it. So I went back in my room and cried a little bit, and then I sort of figured it out.
So you were satirizing a documentary about a person slowly going crazy while making a movie about a person slowly going crazy, and you yourself were slowly going crazy.
That made me cry, but, it was fun. I'm over it now.
It happened because Paul Rugg was writing in that room for like 3 weeks, and his brain was bleeding, and it finally came out.
Hoyle! How'd you with the going? You were there, but here now.
From the look of things, it seemed like there was a lot of freedom, and I know it's a cliche to be like, they don't make them like in the old days, but it almost does sort of seem like that. And I guess what I'm wondering is, was Animaniacs just one of those rare experiences where everything just seemed to go right and everything clicked, or are these experiences really like a dime a dozen?
Well, that was really my first real writing job, and so I now have learned that it doesn't go that well.
It's like we got our dessert first in animation, and then as time went on, we learned what beans tasted like.
Some of the head guys at Warner Brothers, the big mucky muck, said, well, you can't do shorts. Whatever you do, don't do shorts. And we said, well, why not? And so because there's no precedent, no one knows how to do them. You have no model to follow, which is hilarious because, of course, there were 35, 40 years of these gems, these 7-minute gems.
Most shows, it's 3-act structure. You know what you're gonna do. Stories have a beginning, middle, end. They're half hours. They're 11 minutes. It's much more simpler and easier on the editing budget.
Quite a few of the writers that eventually came on to work on Animaniacs were people that I knew through sketch comedy. And they weren't animation writers per se when they started out. In fact, not at all. John McCann and Paul Rugg and Peter Hastings and Deanna Oliver. These are people that I all knew from sketch comedy. The first thing that they wanted to be was funny. None of us knew exactly the wrong way to do it, or the right way to do it. So we just did it the best we could in the funniest way we could.
Mostly we had Tom Ruegger as a great producer. And he would bring us all in. People would say, well, I think I want to write one where they goof on Albert Einstein. And normally it was like, great, you have a go do that. That'll be great. And today, in a lot of shows I've been doing, you can say, yeah, I want to have them goof on Albert Einstein, and then it's like, okay, good, go away and write exactly what that would be, but don't write it. So you do sort of a 3-page outline about what'll happen. The nice thing about Animaniacs was there was really none of that.
You'd get assigned a script, and that'd be your script. It was loose. I mean, ultimately, it was your job to get the script done and get it in, but you had plenty of help there to get you through the rough spots.
There was a lot of freedom. We didn't really have a lot of people hovering over us, telling us what to do, or telling us that was inappropriate to do, or that kids wouldn't get this or that or the other.
I personally never had as much freedom before or after than I had during the Animaniacs.
Sometimes in a network there are 50 people reading your script, and you'll get competing notes from different people. And we didn't really have that. It went to Tom Ruegger, go off to Steven Spielberg, and that was it.
We were very, very lucky in that regard. I mean, it's certainly changed now.
This was at the dawn of the imitatable behavior thing. So, they were afraid that any behavior with a common household object that children could imitate would, in turn lead them to do that and then, trigger a lawsuit.
It's certain educational elements that have to be involved when you're dealing with certain hours of the day for television and all of that stuff that I still don't understand.
There was a scene in Dracula where it was something about turning into a bat. Wacko pulls out an actual bat and hits the vampire. Well, they didn't care for that. They said you can't use a real bat. Tom Ruegger, in a masterful stroke, got around it by putting wings on the wooden bat, and somehow that made it okay.
So a bat with bat wings was okay, but a bat without bat wings was corrupting the youth of America. All I gotta say is that I'm glad most houses don't have anvils and mallets lying around.
Right. Dynamite, except for certain areas of the Southwest. We're safe there.
If we got any sort of inkling that somebody wanted us to be more educational or have more of a theme, then we would mock that, like with the Wheel of Morality, that sort of thing.
Wheel of Morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn. Moral number 2. And the moral of today's story is...